over my head.
Breakfast at Tiffany's?
No.
I said, what about breakfast at Tiffany's? He said, I think I remember FTX.
Have you ever asked yourself how to raise 19 million US dollars in a couple of months? Well, I definitely have. Well, if you have as well, thankfully, we have Carl Dawkins, the head of growth at Tamadoge, who's contributed to just that. If it's your first time on the show, welcome, because this show is for investors who are looking to learn from some of the greatest minds, the richest minds on this planet. And ironically, I call them super investors because it's good to learn from your own mistakes, but it's better to learn from others. And we have a gentleman who you may recognize, but it is your first time meeting him. I'm not going to do any more introductions. We're going to bring him up on stage. So please give a round of applause while you're sitting at home for Mr. Carl Dawkins.
We'll do that. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. If you're first time joining in, please subscribe to their channel because they're absolutely amazing how they interview. I'm Carl, head of growth for Tamadoge. We boast raising 19 million in just under 7.5 weeks during a bear market between August and October. Well, actually, no, sorry, wow. August and end of September. That's scary. Okay. I only realized yesterday that we're now we're 9 weeks old and it's absolutely crazy. Yeah, so for anyone listening as well, we are basically to rundown meme coin, but we're not half serious, half not. We're 2 billion supply, Ethereum blockchain, 0% tax. We're a play-to-earn game, building our own Tamaverse with several games, NFT collections, own NFT marketplace. You can buy merch in Tama. You can pay for Amazon in Tama now as well, which is quite cool. All these sort of things which is happening. So, our main aim is to be the first meme coin to get to $1 in the next bull run. We hit 19 cents, so we're only 5x away from doing that $1 billion market cap. Funny thing is obviously we are a bit of an advantage because we're not a full meme coin, which is quite cool. But yeah, that is sort of what we're pushing. That's me, and that's what we did. Which it made history. We beat Ethereum's ICO by 5 million, and did it quicker, which is sort of like what we tried to use as our little win. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's not a little win by all means. And Carl, as modest as you may come off, if people don't know who you are, we're definitely going to link above part 1. Our longest episode today, we went all over the place and back around, talking about free speech to are you a Nazi, and of course everything to do with crypto. Now there's context about all the
exactly. Please watch the old video. There's definitely context to that.
But we're going to try our hardest, and I think we will on this one because one, we're both running on E. I've got man flu. Carl, do you know what you've got right now?
No, I'm definitely coming over it. There was just something going around. Took COVID test. It wasn't that, but it was mainly. I think the last time we spoke, I was just sort of coming out the end of it, and it's just like long-term fatigue, isn't it? Like it seems to go around at the moment. But do you get the flu jab? Do you get the COVID jab? Do you get none? I'm not going to get into that. I don't really know. Do your own thing. It's your own choice now, isn't it? Your own body, your own choice.
And on the matter of choices.
Yeah,
we're going to choose to talk about weaknesses today, which in the first part, you were open, you were vulnerable throughout, I think, the entire 1 hour that we discussed. And that's exactly why I wanted you to come back, Carl. And, we spoke offline, online about what's the one weakness that you want to speak to the community on. And you said FOMO. And I know there's a lot more to FOMO. And for people who are maybe at the beginning of their journey, what is FOMO, e.g., FOMO?
Yeah.
And number 2, Carl, I'll let you take it from there.
Cool. Yeah. So FOMO is fear of missing out. And that comes in so many different forms in terms of my first thought of FOMO was when you're a kid, your mum says go to bed to have a nap at a party. You don't want to go to bed because you've got fear of missing out of what's going on at the party, right? As a kid. So then we come to crypto. You see the chart rise. You haven't invested. 9 times out of 10, you thought you should have invested.
Yeah.
Haven't invested. And you get that FOMO of am I missing the boat? Am I missing the train, right? So you FOMO in And FOMOing in on a lot of things is usually quite dangerous. Sometimes you can get lucky. Sometimes you can get lucky. And sometimes the FOMO is a good way of reassuring the research that you've done that, yep, you were right and you can catch it at the right time. But 9 times out of 10, FOMO leads a lot of investors into losing money because they say you should never chase the green. It's very, very rare. You can see triple or quadruple bounces. Usually what goes up must come down, usually. And FOMO is, like, say, very, very dangerous. And sometimes the hardest thing in the crypto market is actually letting go of the FOMO, letting go of the fact you missed that opportunity, and actually moving on to the next one and having that confidence that you can move on to the next opportunity. But FOMO for me as well, like I openly say, I suffer from FOMO all the time. It's a constant battle, especially when you're in groups of people that maybe, you know, ask you to get into something or you didn't get into something. I mean, obviously, like we saw a lot of FOMO actually with SHIB. SHIB had a massive FOMO, which is why we saw a massive spike. And now we see a lot of people that are, ironically, not bitter too much, just holding their ship. We saw FOMO, obviously, with Bitcoin during the last bull run. Yeah. We are like, yeah, but we're going to see like FOMO does drive coins sometimes in a good way. But FOMO, especially if you're, I don't know, what way to put it is, it's just very dangerous when you're, but it makes you put emotion into your trading. Anybody who trades, you'll know the best way to trade is no emotion, including NFTs. I mean, I love buying an NFT and stay in the community. But if you want to flip NFTs, no emotion. You know. And same with coins, in and out. Be happy with your profits. I was always told as well, it's so much harder to take profits than it is to cut your losses. Because obviously when like you get greedy, and that's the FOMO, like you're like, oh, will it go as well? Like, should I have put more into this? Oh, why didn't I do that? And then that's FOMO in a different sense, by the way. But that style of FOMO, which is very different, by the way, because that's FOMO in terms of fear of missing out. I've already got in, but I need to get to that next level. And that obviously then gives emotion into your trading or your investing. And some things are good to have emotion in. So I do believe, for example, Bitcoin, I believe that is the future. Ethereum, I love. And I do think, you know, there is the sort of sense of if it goes up or down, 1 Bitcoin still equals 1 Bitcoin. But there is the option of, you know, you put $1,000 into something and it goes up 10x and you think, oh, I should have put more in. And that stops you from cashing out at 5, 6, 7, 8, 10x. Next thing you know, it's at 1x and you're sitting there going, oh, wow, what have I done? So FOMO for me has always been a big thing which I have to combat and be aware of. I think FOMO is something that we all get without being aware of it, but you need to be aware of that emotion.
You do, and ironically, I was listening to an audiobook today about sales EQ, and it's all about how to improve your sales. And it was talking about when we're in a sales situation, whether you're selling yourself to a spouse or a future spouse, or you're trying to, in this case, enter into a project, you have to make a decision, right? And in these moments, we have adrenaline, which most people are aware of adrenaline, and none of us have control of the release of adrenaline, right? So there's those that have shown that you cannot control when your adrenaline is released. It's that fight or flight response that's built into all of us. Right. However, it's shown that it doesn't last for long, a mere matter of seconds. But whilst we do have that rush of adrenaline, it blocks our prefrontal cortex, which is the geeky part of our brain that decides about making calculated decisions.
Yeah.
So when we have that flood of adrenaline, the first few seconds, we don't think logically. To your example about going to bed and wanting to stay up, when you get a parking ticket, maybe the average person is filled with rage. They may hit the wall thinking that was logical, and now they've got a broken knuckle, and suddenly they realize, well, that was dumb. But in the moment, hitting the wall was the correct response. So I, as an investor, have found that whenever I'm about to enter into a position, and it's worked for and against me, and you know, and I say against me, and I'm talking about percentages here, tiny amounts of percentages, I sleep on it because time is on our side. Not saying that sleep's any easier, that I go to bed and think to myself, oh, it's going to take off tomorrow.
Exactly,
So, Carl, to bring it full circle, I sleep on my decisions. I don't jump in the moment. Before I jump into a new project, sleep on it. And then if I still feel the same tomorrow, the adrenaline's passed, we jump in. And I probably kick myself because it's gone up 10%.
Yeah.
How do you deal with your FOMO, Carl?
So yeah, very terrible, like terrible. I mean, there was a project which happened before NFT project. I won't say it. Doesn't really matter what it was, but like, yeah, I think the floor was 0.17 ETH. Did a little bit of research into it, not too much, so I didn't feel confident about going
Which,
full in.
which jumping, Carl, which was at the time how much, ETH?
Oh,
Yeah.
that wasn't very long ago. So that was probably about $200, 0.1617. Did some research and I bought a couple because I always think of NFTs as well as a super investor sort of advice, but do your own research, all that sort of stuff. Is if you NFTs, if you kind of like the project, buy twice because sometimes you want to sell one. Yeah, you want to sell one, but sometimes you actually quite like it. And you're like, I want to keep one just in case. So I bought a couple and obviously, like, I can't believe I called it. Like 2 days later, it goes up to like 1 ETH, and I was like, wow. And I'd sold one on the way up at 0.5. Sold one. I was like, cool. Had the other one. Sold that at 1 ETH, and then it went to 1.2 ETH, and I was like, wow. Saw one at 1 ETH. Bought in just one. Thought, right, I'll hold one. And then it crashed within a week to 0.4. It did actually after that go back up to 0.6, and actually I ended up selling that to then put into a different trade. And that's what sometimes it sounds really bad, but sometimes and this is not a good way to do it sometimes, but if you think of every trade as a certain trade, right? I was like, right, cool. On the first two, I made a good trade.
Mm-hmm.
On the second one, technically, I made a 50% loss. However, then on that, the reason why I sold that one at that time wasn't because I thought it was going down. It's actually because I had something else I wanted to get involved with, and I wanted easy liquidity. So took that out, and all of a sudden, right, caught in my head, good trade, bad trade, but they offset because one's better than the other.
Okay.
This one got put into the next trade, which was better. So that sort of makes you feel good.
Yeah.
The worst thing that can happen with FOMO is doing something like that, cutting, like almost trying to cut your losses. You're 50% down, you put it into a new trade, and that goes tits up, shall we say. So then, of course, you're fully down. Whereas we always know with a lot of projects, if you do research into it, mainly in crypto, not so much NFTs as much, mainly in crypto, long-term projects win. And, you only sell when you lose. 1 ETH is 1 ETH, blah, blah, blah. So my always thing is as long as you know a project's a long-term project, I always have this confidence that they will do something at some point. They'll always reach back to their all-time highs, or they'll get to a position where you can even end up trading to get said money back at the very least. And one thing that I do find is, once again, you put in that emotion into these trades, because if you're taking, like when I cashed that out at 50% loss, luckily the FOMO wasn't there. I wasn't thinking, oh, I've lost 50%. I actually thought, no, I want this liquidity to put into this trade, right? So I was more excited about step C or step D, whatever it is. More excited about doing that trade. So I wanted liquidity for it. And luckily that went all right. But sometimes if you're doing it because you get FOMO, you see something else and you think, I need liquidity, I need to jump in now, and you end up selling something at a loss to then put into that next trade at a FOMO level because you feel like, and then of course then that crashes, and all of a sudden 9 times out of 10 the thing you just cashed out of is probably going to do something because you had faith in that in the first place. And it's, I think it's at the moment 80% of traders still lose technically in crypto. I know it's different for the stock market, but in crypto 80% of traders still lose on the whole, which is a very, very scary stat. So if anybody watching is in a trading position where you are actually making money, you're actually doing better than 80% of the people out there. Do you know what I mean?
It is a surprising statistic. And purely because, and I say this, traders make more money in the short term, investors make more money in the long term. Like, for example, I'm a long-term investor. You and I both know it takes one sale and you've changed your life for the past 2 years or 3 years by being in. You mentioned belief a lot, and I'm not spiritual, although I am studying the Bible. I'm more philosophical. Are you religious? And you'll see why I'm asking.
Yeah, very. We haven't chatted this too much, but very similar. I came from I was raised a Catholic. I was an altar boy for 2 years. I went to a convent and was taught by nuns for 2 years, of 7, 8 years taught by nuns, which was awesome.
Wow.
But I lost faith in all religion at the age of 13 when my nan died. And it was just this weird, she got buried in it. She was Catholic, heavily Catholic. My granddad was still very heavily Catholic. And I did sort of lose all faith, and then I had this one nun that was teaching me called Sister Michaela. Hopefully you see this, by the way, because I'm going to send this to you now. And she basically was a Malibu drinking, PlayStation playing nun, and I mean, obviously in the right way, by the way. Do you know what I mean? She, all by the book. She would let me leave school early because we weren't allowed to take 3 periods off because it was a convent. Other schools did. She let me leave early.
What is a convent? Sorry, I'm not familiar.
Oh, yeah, convent is where you get taught by nuns.
Okay, so
yeah, obviously we had a lot of normal teachers as well, but we had a few nuns still there. And yeah, she was like, she would let me leave early. I can say this now because no one's going to care. She would let me leave early so all the teachers wouldn't be in the staff rooms when I left the front of the building. No one could see me. And she really changed my perception because she never found God till she was 18. So there's me being 14, 15, 16, having this sort of very rebellious attitude, not really liking it. And it was probably the best thing that happened to me because she gave me such tolerance. I would ask all the questions, and I even do it now. I think the best way is to ask all the questions, right? I love having chats with anybody in religion where I can ask all the questions. And if your last response is it's because I believe in it, awesome. Right? For example, if me and you right now say, let's get some good ones here. Let's say these are God. Like this is God. If me and you believe these are God, and there's no one else here in the world, surely this is what we believe in. For me as well, I'm like, if everyone believes in something, no one knows until we die, which I think is awesome in that sense. So, that's why I have such respect for everybody who can have a conversation about this very openly. And so, like, no one knows till we die. There's no sure fact that there is a God at all. And I do think that's also one thing where I can't say you're wrong for saying there's no God. You can't tell me I'm wrong for saying there is one, for example, right? And I think that's actually quite a beautiful thing, which a lot of people lose. But have faith, I think, is a very respectful thing to have it in the right way. Personally, because I traveled all over the world being a musician, I celebrate Holi, I celebrate Diwali, I celebrate Eid technically because I just get free food from a lot of my neighbors, which is quite. I know it's Eid, but I'm getting food dropped off to the house, which is wicked. And I've always, for me, Buddhism personally, Buddhism for me was the one that actually makes most sense.
Yeah.
More from an energy perspective, I'm big into energy. Like I've always had this this is why I did so well at playing poker when I was younger. You walk into a room, they say you can cut the tension with a knife. That's you reading the energy in the room, and like that energy is all around us. Like sometimes it can get blocked with big crowds, sometimes blocked with for example, one disadvantage of Web3 is the energy is very different. I'm reading you from a screen, not from in presence, so the energy isn't there as much. But I've always had a big belief in the energy thing, which is obviously that's mainly Buddhism. Buddhism, respect all religions, and when you die, the energy goes back into the world. Which, like just quickly as well. Let's digress quickly. Ghosts, Jordan. Ghosts. What's your belief in ghosts?
Well, I said at the beginning of this, we're going to stay on track, and look at you bringing us to ghosts.
Give me 1 minute about ghosts.
We need a handler on you, Carl. Someone.
I'm waiting for the production team to walk in. I'm waiting for it to come in. Like, come on. 19 million, mate. They should be
okay. Go on. I promise you, we're going to come to ghosts in a second. But you said 2 things there. One, thank you for sharing about that moment in your life, that moment of chaos, where obviously a memorable moment, and we'll make sure, of course, we'll get that snippet over to. What was the nun's name?
Sister Michaela. Hello, Sister Michaela. Yeah, she's in Liverpool at the nunnery there now. They moved up there. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure she's extremely proud of you, Carl.
Oh, and, honestly, she's gonna love this. By the way, she's gonna absolutely love this.
That's incredible. But there was a rap lyric by Kendrick Lamar, and it speaks to what you were saying about anyone who believes in anything. And you use the glass as an example. Hey, I'm not here to prove you right and wrong, and I think that causes a lot of problems today when we from small matters when we're arguing with our spouse to, of course, big geopolitical issues when we're talking about right and wrongs. But Kendrick Lamar had this lyric. He's a rapper for anyone who's not familiar.
I'm a massive fan. I've seen him loads of times. Yeah.
And so you may even know this lyric. And he said that he would rather believe in a God and die and find out there isn't one than to not believe in a God and die and find out there is one.
Right. So basically, I've got a few friends who
Oh,
are heavily religious, and I say
yeah,
to them all the time, as half joke, half serious, it is kind of serious. Get me on the
yeah,
guest list. Like, I do believe there is. I do believe there must be something. At the very least, I think there is energy, right? And I think that energy is there. And I studied. I actually studied religious studies. Obviously, being at a convent, I studied religious studies. I did philosophy and ethics for my A levels. The only thing I ever did actually well in. And one thing I did like about that is the fact that God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. I pronounced those wrong, but it's omni. God is those three omnis, right?
everywhere, all the time, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And basically, the main thing is that God is uncomprehendable. Okay. So the idea of God in the Catholic religion, Christian religion, Allah, also the Jewish religion, is that God is uncomprehendable to the point where, and this is what I love about, if I say this to some people, they don't get it, we get into an argument, and I hate that. I have to leave. So God is uncomprehendable, okay? So to the point where I cannot tell you, no matter how much I believe in God, what God is, what God does, what God is anything, okay?
yeah.
Because he is, the word uncomprehendable gets lost. Uncomprehendable literally means you have no idea how that person is going to react, do anything, right? And based on my studies of religion, I always found that if God is all loving, which I do believe, the idea of God, I don't think he gives a shit about any of us in a good way, to the point where it's like, yeah, look, come. I think it's like that. Come, you're going to come here, and I'm going to, he has that sort of surprise. Oh, look, I was real. Haha, here you are. Do you know what I mean? And with that, it's because he is uncomprehendable. It's like, whether you believe in God or not, that when you do get to, let's say, the pearly gates, let's just say the pearly gates. When you do get to the pearly gates, you didn't believe. He goes, haha, told you. Do you know what I mean? But do you know what I mean? Because obviously he wouldn't care. He wouldn't care that he didn't believe, because if we are all part of God's children in some way, it doesn't actually matter if you believed in him at all, because he has love for every single person, and he is uncomprehendable. So even my statements that I just said actually don't make sense because it's uncomprehendable. That's one thing that I've always liked, is that, and one of my thing I say, I've jokes with my friends who are really just saying, yeah, just put me on the guest list, and if I get there first, I'll just wait outside and say you're turning up soon. But yeah, I do think, because he is uncomprehendable, and apparently there is, everyone says it is one love from God. Well, in that case, then it doesn't matter if you believe or not. Just when you get there, he's going to be there. Hopefully, if he's there for you.
Yeah.
And that's what I think as well. Like, just sounds like, can I swear on this channel? I don't know, but like Buddha said, quote, just don't be a. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, the C word piss is hard in the British language.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's basically just don't be a dick to each other.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you said about adrenaline, faith also blinds some people, because faith gives some people hope. And sometimes when you're in a bad place, faith is really good. Sometimes when you're in a certain place, faith can blind you to make decisions which you believe is right for the greater good, when might not be. But yeah, so that's a really deep. Carl Dawkins has got deep.
That was perfectly put, because we're gonna leave ghosts for the end, but mainly because that's a beautiful segue in what you just said there, which was faith is blind.
Yeah.
And just because you have faith in something does not mean you're right. And I'm not talking in the context of religion here.
No, exactly, because it also doesn't mean you're wrong, and vice versa. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm bringing that back to investing. For example, big XRP fan, big Bitcoin fan, big fan of blockchain technology.
Sorry about that, mate. I'm joking. I'm sorry. XRP army. I've got big love. I've got big love.
Makes you tough, Carl. Makes you tough being XRP army.
Wait till I start talking about Ada.
Don't worry. There's no beef on this channel. There's no beef.
Oh, no beef. No, but Charles Hockinson, quickly, if you are watching this, you deployed 200 contracts last year. Can you please make sure one of them actually does something? 40% of the supply is staked. I love it. But come on, do something. Do something. XRP, you own 50% of the supply. Wicked. You buy and sell. You constantly have 50%. Totally fine. Just do something.
But and this is the point, right? I have faith that Ripple, who is building the biggest use case for XRP, it's not the only one, but by far Ripple are the biggest company
I agree.
building a use case for XRP, and that the faith is an interesting one because it doesn't matter, and you're on the other side, and Carl, maybe we do and don't touch upon projects you have and haven't worked on that have turned out well. But at this moment in time, on the 29th of November, I have faith that XRP will appreciate in price.
Yeah.
Why? Because if Ripple build a product that is in demand, that will build demand for XRP. Just because I have faith, just because I have belief and I put my money where my mouth is, doesn't mean that faith can be destroyed in a month's time if more information comes out.
Well, sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah, please.
XRP, right? You're the fourth biggest coin in the world. You aren't going anywhere. You are not going anywhere. Like, it's so funny because 50% being owned by the company, and they're doing the buys and sells. So if you were lucky enough over the last few years to spot the trading, you were very, very handsome. But at the same time, they're very transparent about what they do. Like, I love how Ripple as a company, people confuse Ripple and XRP. XRP is Ripple's coin. What Ripple are doing as a company is actually really cool. Like, I couldn't actually give a about XRP, the coin. What Ripple are doing, I'm very excited about. And I do think XRP had the big thing from 2017. Obviously, like the Coinbase listing of XRP was like, I love how back then it was on Binance. It was like, stuff Binance. But it went on Coinbase, it was, you know, $1.92, mate. Everyone's going mad. But XRP missed the last bull run. They missed the last bull run because of the SEC. Just quickly as well, the SEC, in my knowledge, if I'm wrong, please somebody comment, but they're a regulating unregulated body in America, which got started because of the stock market in the 1930s. The SEC have nothing to do. They've had nothing to do since the 1980s manipulation, and they were struggling for funding to convince the government that they actually needed funding to do their job. And the government like, well, what do you do though? And the SEC went, okay, let's start picking on, because XRP having that whole 50% holdings and trying to be quite transparent with the whole banking industry, trying to bridge that gap between banks and Web3, an easy target, right? Now, I believe it's the CFTA or the CFT, one of the two. Please double check that.
CFTC?
CFTA? Let me just...
the acronyms.
One sec, you can edit this bit of it. CFTA, USA.
But I do know the CFTC.
Oh, that's it. CFTC. There we go.
Yeah, they're constantly fighting over wanting.
Yeah, so basically, the CFTC should actually be the ones having a go at Ripple.
Yeah.
Because the CFTC are recently made, not recently, but compared to the SEC, more recently made regulating body. I'm pretty sure they're more in bed with the government than the SEC are. But they should actually be in control of actually saying what a security is and what's going on. The SEC, in my opinion, is just, they're looking for ways to get more funding. And everybody knows XRP won the lawsuit last April. I mean, if you don't know that, XRP won the lawsuit last April. Last April, when they started asking for the documents, nobody could provide the documents from the SEC. They found out a lot of the SEC people actually held Ripple anyway. So, like, what are you doing? You know, they're not a government agency technically, and you say it's the CFT which should actually be in control of this situation. And it just feels like that's when we saw the SEC try to pick holes at Ethereum, which I thought was hilarious. Now, unfortunately, I was a big AMP fan originally because Gemini Pay were using AMP as a collateral token. I was very lucky on that trade to get out. I could have made loads more money. I didn't. I got out at a good time to still not make a massive loss, but they got deemed a security, which has absolutely killed that coin. And obviously, like, AMP's use case has now gone down because Gemini Pay is not working, and it just seems like like the SEC they have a blank checkbook for lawyers. They have a blank checkbook for lawyers, and if you're in America and you're a lawyer, it's very different to the UK. You are making shed tons of money at the moment for not doing a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, mate, this lawsuit should have ended so long ago. It annoys me that it keeps going, but it's free press. It's free press for XRP.
Hey, Carl, I'm glad that you had that chance to vent. I really am, bro. And you taught me something just there about the history of the SEC and how little I actually know. And I always say the further back you go, the further forward you can look.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, everyone double check those statements because I'm very flamboyant.
But it's something worth. I'm sure there is something that we can grab on there of where the origins were and how it's come about today.
Yeah.
Because, for example, I think it was last night, BlockFi.
Oh man.
And how the reason why it's even more controversial, as you're talking about the SEC, is how they settled with the SEC, paid that $100 million fine, which
something like that.
Mind-boggling.
Pay the fine. Pay the fine. Yeah.
Paid the fine. SEC were like, yeah, great. We've done our investigation on you. You are fine to operate. And now look what's transpired. They've now filed for Chapter 11, which I did my little digging. Do you know much about Chapter 11 bankruptcy?
A little bit, but not so much for America, but like the just a little bit on just when they file for it. For me personally, what I saw, my limited knowledge was it was almost done on purpose. So offset the 100 million to the SEC because, in my opinion, they weren't in a good place anyway. So basically, if they filed for bankruptcy and they were under investigation by the SEC, they're not going to get their payouts. They're not going to get their government support, etc. They're not going to be able to go through the same process of doing a bankruptcy if they got deemed as security, etc. So if you pay the 100 million, oh, you're a legitimate thing. That's totally fine. Awesome. Now let's do bankruptcy. Because if you do bankruptcy with being under investigation, or do bankruptcy with being or we're not sure about you. You are not going to get any help or any favors. Like, hey, the guy from SDX, SBF, whatever he's called. Like, so what he gets done for whatever on the day he gets hacked, which we all know. Apparently, Kraken know who the hacker is and aren't telling anybody, which annoys me. Apparently, Kraken know who the hacker is. I mean, tweeting them being like, "You said you know." You're either lying or you're just trolling us. Now, he donates 70 million on that day to politicians.
Yeah.
Why? Because he knows half of those politicians are going to have his back so he doesn't get extradited and go to jail.
Like and people listen right now who may not be aware or even are aware, because even myself, I don't know about you, Carl, but when I'm seeing it and even seeing it unfold in real time now, like we are last night, I still kind of don't believe it. You know, we talk about faith. You still kind of don't believe it because these are the industry leaders in this space.
Yeah.
And we're like, surely not. Surely.
Oh, mate, I have like total transparency as well. I say I have friends. I have friends of friends who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting at all, but they're very big boys, shall we say. And they've lost hundreds of thousands in FTX. Hundreds of thousands. A friend lost loads of money because they had active trades going. I just did a video on my personal channel about should you take money off the exchanges. My opinion is if you're holding this is a two-part statement because if you're holding less than like $3,000, right, and if you're holding something and you're staking it, and you're getting good rates, you want to leave it on the exchange. And if you're holding for the long term with more than 3K, etc., why leave it on the exchange? Why? If you're holding $150 worth of SHIB, is it worth spending $20 sending it to your wallet? And that's sort of the thing. A lot of the FUD that came around, like we said before, about did influencers cause the crash? And we saw that FUD with crypto.com and Gate.io. So crypto.com sent Gate.io 480 million, and then Gate.io went, oh, sorry, sent 200 million back. Now, there's a couple of things to this, ready? There is definitely something going on. I don't think we need to worry about it at all, by the way, but there's something going on that we don't know because these guys have a lot more money than us anyway. Now, everyone started going, the guy from crypto.com, the CEO needs to resign. It's like, why? Like, they sent it to a whitelist address. Why is nobody talking about the fact that there's a whitelist address for Gate.io on the crypto.com site to send that amount of money to? That's my question. So, and also, by the way, these exchanges are talking to each other and trying to back each other up to stop crashes. Is that not a bad thing?
I know.
Yeah,
I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, so, like I said about the 3K, etc. So yeah, more than 3K. If you're leaving it on the exchange, might as well take it off, including Tamadoge, by the way. So I have mine off, and then if you see a staking opportunity, you can put it back on. Ironically, to counteract my entire point is obviously I had like 300,000 or 3 million Doge. I can't remember how much it was on Cryptopia.nz. It was only $100 worth at the time. Didn't take it off. They got hacked, lost my Doge. That's now worth an absolute ton of money. So when I sat there and went, well, maybe you don't take $150 worth of SHIB off. Maybe you do. But I think Crypto.com just sponsored the World Cup. Bitstamp.com boasts 95% of the crypto is offline and they have insurance. Binance is 600,000 Bitcoin in reserves. Coinbase 200,000 Bitcoin in reserve. I'm like, FTX was a shit show and it was a black swan. But ironically, it sounds really weird. I always had this. For me, FTX never really appealed to me. Obviously, honestly, really, maybe it's a gut instinct, but like it never appealed to me. It was always there. It's one of the biggest exchanges. But it never appealed to me. Maybe I'm just really lucky in that sense. Like, I don't leave long trades open too much now anyway. I had a couple on Binance years ago, but now I just don't leave long trades on because I get really paranoid of all the bots. Obviously, every single bot can see your trade. And if you leave a long trade on, someone's going to snipe you. But FTX I got really lucky with, and I feel sorry for anyone that did lose a lot of money on it. Honestly, it's not cool. The fact they had 9 billion worth to pay out, and they only had 1 billion. And yet they also invested 120 million in that little hut of a building, that bank. And so many things are coming out. And I don't know if you checked, but BitBoy has gone there to the Bahamas and he's standing outside SBF's apartment.
You heard about this?
He's outside his apartment.
No, but Sam unblocked him. They've got an interview coming up.
No way.
After this, maybe even now, go on your phone right now, go on BitBoy's Twitter. And it's not just him. There's a woman called Tiffany. Oh, damn it.
Yeah, so his face.
Anyway, there's a woman called Tiffany who's had 2 phone calls with him and recorded it and put it on YouTube, and he knows and he's complied. And Sam is now on this interview hiatus where he is now complying. He's been kind of banished from FTX, and they said whatever he says is no reflection on us. And he's being as transparent as he should have been about. He knew he shouldn't have used customer funds, but he thought he was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so you're going to love those interviews, and anyone else at home, don't.
Yeah, I just saw. I can't believe I missed that.
Yeah, don't take it from me. Go to BitBoy's account.
Yeah, I just saw.
There's a woman called Tiffany. I forget her last name. Tiffany. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But it definitely is
somewhere.
Say again, Carl.
She probably gets breakfast somewhere at Tiffany's.
That went over my head.
Breakfast at Tiffany's?
No.
I said, what about breakfast at Tiffany's? He said, I think I remember FTX.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
God, I want you to be my co-host, man.
Mate, anytime. You shout me on anytime, brother. Anytime. Let's see if we can get SBF. If we can get SBF, get on.
Imagine. Carl, last point. Because conscious of time, I'm also losing my voice.
I'm definitely coming back soon.
Yeah, you are. Next year. I'll see you next year, bud.
Yeah.
Ghosts, nope. I don't think about them. I haven't had any encounters, so therefore I don't have any faith to exist. Hit me.
Right, so quickly. So once again, faith, no idea if they're real or not, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. There's no evidence to suggest about ghosts. Mediums that I've met seem to be BS. However, when I was a younger kid, apparently I used to see somebody at the corner of my room at 2 years old. And a few times I said to my mum, I was like, well, one day actually, I crawled downstairs, opened up a massive 4-pint of milk and did that. And they were like, why? And I was like, the lady in my room said to say it.
Oh,
and I was like, all right. And they didn't think anything of it. And then a couple of days later, going across the road, and this has all been told to me, going across the road, I'm in the pram, and I went, stop. And my mum went, what? He said, you've got to look left and right. And she was like, what? I said, oh yeah, the lady in the room told me to look left and right. And she was like, who the heck told you to look left and right on the road, right? So then after a while, like one other thing was said. And then after a while, I didn't say anything. And then my mum one day, after like a month or so, turned around and went, oh, have you seen the lady in the room? And I went, oh, apparently my thoughts, I was quite like withdrawn. I went, no, I just see a man at the end of the bed and he just stands there. And my mum went, what? So I found this out when I was, apparently after that, I never said anything. And I found out when I was 16, my mum had an exorcism done on the bloody house.
She had a what?
Exorcism done on the house, like a blessing from the priest.
Yeah.
And it was actually, there's only 2 priests in my life all over the world, one here, one in a different country, where I've actually felt, and Sister Michaela as well, where I felt like they were persons of God. And in terms of forget about your religious stuff, more like bringing the energy, right? And he was actually one person that actually thought you are actually a man of God with the spiritualism. Now, to counter that point, I still don't think there's actually ghosts personally in that sense. But one thing I will quickly say is studying philosophy and ethics, there's something called the stone tape theory. Now, the stone tape theory is the one theory which I think makes sense for seeing ghosts. So let's take Hampton Court Palace, for anyone who's watching. This is where Henry VIII was, with Anne Boleyn, I'm pretty sure it was Anne Boleyn, who got beheaded. And she got told she was being beheaded before, the day before, like 2 days before. So there have been sightings and voices of her running up and down a certain corridor in Hampton Court Palace occasionally for the last however many years. And so the stone tape theory is, when you see ghosts, you never see a happy ghost. You never see a ghost which is every single ghost sighting is something which has high emotion. Okay, so for example, Anne Boleyn's about to get her head cut off. She's running up and down screaming, that high emotion, or somebody's murdered somebody, so you've got that high emotion, or been murdered, that high emotion. So we bring that to energy quickly. We feel like, right, you are giving off that much energy from your emotions. Okay, so you are projecting that energy from your emotions. Now, the stone tape theory says you only really actually usually see ghosts in old buildings. You never see ghosts in like a new build or anything. So the idea is, with the stone tape theory, let's say I was to unfortunately kill you for some reason in an old castle, and the emotions are very, very high. Your emotions are going to be higher than mine because, you know what I mean? Because you're the victim.
Yeah.
The walls capture the energy and capture the emotion and that short-lived thing. So they have no idea still what triggers it. But with Anne Boleyn, for example, you know, let's just say the moon. The moon does something because obviously the moon has gravitational pull between water. That's why we all suffer sometimes from certain things, because the moon gets up and down with your water levels, and it would trigger something in the old walls to play back like a DVD player. So it's not technically a ghost, but it is. It's just replaying the emotions and the energy. And that's the one thing that I found that made sense with a lot of ghost sightings. Does that make sense? Yeah. In that sense as well, if someone's going to go murder SBF, like, honestly, like, please don't. I'm not condoning it. But if you're going to do something like that, please do it in a place where there's old buildings so we can maybe get a nice little haunting.
And on that note, I think it's perfect time to cut the episode.
Hello, thank you very much. From Tamadoge. Also, what's that guy who used to do all the medium stuff? I was going to say Darren Brown, but it's not him. Yeah, honestly, Jordan, absolute pleasure, man. This is like, these last 2 chats have been an absolute breath of fresh air compared to a lot of the AMAs and other interviews that I do. So if anybody is watching, I am speaking at loads of events in the next few years. Blockchain Expo main speaker. Just chatted at the House of Commons as well for UK Parliament. With Tamadoge, we are half serious, half fun. So I get the fun, also get the, you know, we get the serious side as well. We are trying to change the game of crypto, as you can probably tell, and we are trying to do something different here. And I do believe with everything that's going on, we are standing out more and more as something which people can be confident in joining in with over the next decade or 2 decades, or for the future. Tamadoge is not going anywhere. I'm going to die and Tamadoge is still going to be on the blockchain, still there, which is actually really scary to think. Like this here, like this is never going away. Even in that sense, I can't wait. Maybe, you know, like the whole Mask of Zorro, pass the torch to the next person to take my job over. To be like, right now you lead the army. So yeah, that's what I love about blockchain, and I just love how I'm going to see this interview probably in 10 years' time when we do another one, and we're like, do you remember when this happened?
Like, Carl, you know what I love most about what we have nowadays is it's a legacy, right? That your kids, whether or not they get to see you at a certain age, they'll get to look back and watch Dad and what he was doing here and what he looked like and what he sounded. And more importantly, the journey, because it's so hard. Because again, Carl, we've got a snapshot into your world. You know, we see you as the man who's contributed to, you know, to outforming Ethereum's ICO, right? 90 million in a couple of months and so much more. Yet it's often overlooked, the journey you've been on.
Yeah. I'm
And
still pinching myself with what's
yeah,
been going on. It's mental.
and again, I've only spent 2 hours with you,
Yeah.
and there's an awful lot behind you. All I can say is that you are a great man. You're doing some great things. I know you have the weight on your shoulders, and probably most of that weight you put on yourself.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm a big guy, so luckily it's. Why make fat jokes, Jordan, before we end?
Oh my god! I'm glad you have a great sense of humor, man.
Oh, that's right. Also, as well, just before we go, as well. Obviously,
I told you I have man flu.
I'm not really into football, but England just won, right? So we should
You did.
probably give a celebration. Maybe you can basically now,
Yeah.
just right now, look, do a short kneel. Hey, England, well done. Tamadoge loves you. Super Investor Show loves you. Well done for getting to the next round. Jordan and Carl here on the show. Yeah, retweet us. I don't know who plays for England anymore, but maybe one of them can retweet us.
And I think everyone will understand that we really are soft fans, because by no means are we. Carl, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's an understatement saying that. Any last words for anyone?
Oh, I think I said too much already.
You sure have. You sure have. But I'm going to research the stone tape theory.
Yeah, please do. I think I like that. Yeah.
And more importantly, FOMO, right?
Yeah.
Understanding that it's not something any of us can get out of us.
And also, actually, I will say one thing. FOMO, like, it's so hard to chat to somebody about FOMO, by the way, because you'll chat to someone about FOMO quickly. You'll chat to someone about FOMO, and it makes your FOMO worse because sometimes you chat to the wrong person and you feel like, oh no, this project is good. When you get FOMO, you need to chat to somebody who's not in the project, who's into a different project. Best way to get rid of FOMO, chat to somebody who's invested in something different and get excited about, because you spend all this time doing research on a project. And the reason why FOMO comes in is because sometimes you feel like you've wasted all that time doing this research and you didn't pull the trigger. Stop. You've won. You won. The fact that you did this research and you didn't pull the trigger is good, because even though you didn't take the opportunity, it means you can do it. It means you can, and those opportunities are going to come up over the next 5 years, guaranteed, like tenfold. Yeah.
So powerful. So powerful. Thank you for that, Carl.
Thank you.
And one last thing I want everyone to know, I'm trying to get this channel to 10,000 subscribers. So please, I need to start asking you, if you've watched this far,
do it.
If you like me, maybe you've watched this far because of Carl, but please subscribe, help us get to that 10,000 goal. And then I'll be like, hey, help us get to 20,000. So it'll never
the never ending thing.
Exactly. With that being said, if you didn't learn anything new, we'll see you next week. Carl, I'll see you next year, sir.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.